Trying to leave the house. My bag is half packed. I've lost my keys. Again. At least one of my kids is missing a shoe. The dog has decided now is the ideal time to raid the kitchen trash. And the day hasn't even begun yet. We're already 5 minutes late, and the clock is ticking. My stress levels are rising, and I'm still standing in the same spot, trying to will the twitch in my eye away and thinking, it never goes smooth. How come it never goes smooth? Why do transitions, even the seemingly simple ones like getting ready to leave the house in the morning, always feel like chaos? And more importantly, what the hell can we do about it? Welcome back to ADHD Adultish. I'm Kim Spangler, ADHD coach and fellow hater of transitions, big and small. If switching tasks feels like herding turtles in the snow to you, then my friend, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's start with the basics. What are transitions? Well, transitions are the shifts that we make from one state to another. There are several different types of transitions that we could talk about. Physical transitions, like, moving your body from one place to another. Emotional transitions, which are, shifts in how we feel or react to something. There are mental transitions, which, involve shifting our focus or attention. And then there's kind of like the bigger wide angle lens view of transitions, like big life transitions, graduating from high school and going to college, changing a job, getting married, having a baby, moving to a new city, things like these. So, why are transitions so challenging for ADHD brains? Well, like everything we talk about, there's many different reasons, but from a global standpoint, executive dysfunction is at the root of most transition ills. Let's take task switching, for example, when we're like shifting mental focus. And sometimes task switching can be a physical change as well. You have to stop what you're doing, move your focus to a new thing, start that new thing, and then stay focused on the new thing, right? Each of these steps involves different levels of executive function. We have to have impulse control to stop the task we're on. We have to have cognitive flexibility to switch our gears, task initiation, starting the next thing, and then sustained attention to focus on that new task. And for ADHD brains, any or all of those pieces can be a roadblock. Now, to zero in a little bit more, we are going to start with my personal arch nemesis, working memory. One reason that our brains want to resist transitioning sometimes, especially if it's like an unexpected interruption, is because we know from experience that if we get out of the focus zone, we're going to lose where we were at. Maybe we'll forget to come back to what we were doing. Maybe when we come back to it, we won't remember what we were doing or where we were planning to go with the thing we were working on. We know how hard it is to get back into a mental flow once it's broken. Which leads me to the next issue, losing momentum. Because our brains thrive on momentum, don't we? When a person with ADHD gets a flow going, we are unstoppable, like a freight train zooming along down a track. But have you ever seen a train stop and then start again? It takes forever, right? Then there's always the time blindness factor. Transitions often require an awareness of time, and most of us are very lacking in that area. Time can feel like an abstract concept. We aren't able to accurately conceptualize things like how long we've been doing something or how much time we need to transition. Maybe it feels like the task we're about to do will take a really long time, even if it's something simple or small. Maybe we feel like we've been doing the thing that we're doing right now for only a short time, and in reality, it's been like 4 hours. Sometimes we're struggling to let go of the dopamine that our current task is giving us. Leaving an engaging task for something less interesting is very difficult. One of the hallmarks of ADHD is struggling with impulse control. Stopping the fun thing you were doing can be almost physically painful. Like if you've ever felt like that and dismissed it as like, oh, I'm just, being overdramatic. No, it's a thing. It can be a physical pull. Now, this can be particularly difficult for things that we're doing that are giving us little dopamine boosts repeatedly, like doom scrolling Facebook or playing a video game. Unfortunately, these things can suck us in and give us this nice little steady stream of dopamine with almost no effort. The problem with getting dopamine in those ways is that when we stop, we feel even more sucked dry of energy instead of feeling revitalized. And finally, there's emotional dysregulation. Interruptions or unexpected transitions can spark big emotions like, frustration or anger. Then, when we're dysregulated from the unexpected disruption to our current focus, the transition becomes even harder. Great, right? Struggling with transitions doesn't just affect you, it can also impact your relationship with others. When you're late, when you forget something important, or you get stuck in a hyperfocus, it can create tension and misunderstandings with the people around you. For example, shifting from work mode to family time can be hard at the end of the day if your brain is still buzzing with unfinished tasks and, things that are going to need to be done tomorrow at work. These moments can lead to feelings of guilt for you and frustration for them. So, that's all some bad news, but what about the good news? Well, the good news is that there are ways we can make transitions easier on ourselves, our kids, our partners, etc. First things first is identifying which part of the transition is tripping you up the most. Maybe it's the whole process, start to finish. If that's the case, here are some general tips on how to smooth your transitions. First, if you've been listening the past few weeks, you've heard me talk a lot about routines and how they can provide helpful structure in day-to-day life. Creating a routine specific to transitions can help lower the friction by making them predictable, giving your brain little subliminal signals so that it eventually reacts to the pattern. I like to think of this as a transition ritual. That sounds a little more, magical than just a boring old routine, right? So, why can a transition ritual help? Have you ever heard of Pavlov's dogs? Ivan Pavlov was a Russian physiologist in the late 1800s who studied classical conditioning, which is the process of training the brain to link a specific cue to a specific action or feeling. Pavlov was doing research on dogs' digestive processes, and, thanks for taking one for the team on that, Pavlov. Somewhere along the way, he noticed that the dogs involved in his research would start drooling when they saw the technician who always brought their food. Not just when they saw the food, but when they saw the person who they associated with delivering their food. It was a signal to their brain of what was to come. Now, am I suggesting that we all treat ourselves like a Pomeranian who we're trying to train to, sit and stay? Maybe. Here is an example of how I use a small routine to ease a transition in my life that I find challenging. When my youngest kiddo gets on the bus to go to school in the morning, I sometimes struggle to get myself to sit down at the computer and shift into work mode. My day typically starts with care tasks. I'm getting myself ready for the day, doing a few household chores, getting my daughter ready to go, making sure she's got a lunch and a snack, taking the dog out, etc., etc. Once I'm in that mode, it is very hard to switch to work brain, especially if I'm feeling particularly productive in the moment. But work has to be done nonetheless. So here's what I do. I refresh my cup of coffee, and I set it at my desk on my favorite coaster that says, "All you need is love and a good book," which my dad gave me. Then I go around the house and kind of methodically light candles. First in the kitchen, then in the living room, then in my bathroom, and finally the one at my desk. I use one of those long stick lighters that are for lighting a barbecue pit, and for some reason I find the little click, click, click sound it makes very satisfying. Then, with the pleasant smell of an almond croissant or a book loft candle filling the room, I sit down and open my computer. I take a sip of my coffee from my I literally can't mug, because I don't like to be told what I can and can't do, much less by a coffee cup. So it makes me feel like I need to prove it wrong, and literally that I can. I take a moment to appreciate the flavor of the coffee and the pleasant warmth of the mug, and then I start checking emails. Now, do I do that whole ritual every single morning? Which, by the way, it takes 5 minutes tops. But do I do it every single morning, the whole thing? No, absolutely not. Sometimes I only need parts of it. Sometimes I don't need any of it at all. Sometimes my mind has been on work all morning and it's a relief to finally be able to sit down and get rolling. But when I need it, it's there. I think there are a few important things about this particular ritual that helps me transition. First, did you notice how minute the details were that I described? It's not just because I have no self-control when it comes to writing flowery prose, although that is almost certainly also true. It's because all of the little parts of this ritual engage different senses, and I think that that is one of the reasons why it works very well for me. It also gives me little dopamine boosts along the way. Every step is something little that I find enjoyable, pleasant, or just satisfying. Now, let's think back to that morning chaos I was describing at the top of the episode. The missing shoe, the lost keys, the dog knocking over the trash can. Now, that might feel like an impossible scenario, but routines can help take off some of the pressure here too. Because sometimes the routine that helps a transition doesn't actually happen during the transition. It happens in advance. So, for example, for making your mornings go more smoothly, you might need a quick nighttime routine, like getting bags packed and put by the front door, making sure everybody's got their clothes and socks and shoes set together somewhere, getting into the habit of putting your keys in the exact same place every time so you always know where they are. All of these things just are small things, but these small proactive steps can turn mornings from pure chaos into something more manageable. Now, if creating a routine around transitions is something that sounds helpful for you, but you're not sure where to start with creating routines, you can download the free ADHD routine starter kit to help. It reviews some simple steps to get started, gives you some ready to use templates, and or walks you through making your own so you can start small, build momentum, and create routines that actually work for your life. I will drop a link in the show notes so you can grab a copy, or you can find it on my website, levelupmyadhd.com, under resources in the menu. Another way to ease your transition woes is to set boundaries around interruptions. Okay, y'all, I'm not going to tell a lie here. With 3 kids, I absolutely struggle with this one. I'm working on it, but I've been working from home for almost 13 years, since my eldest kiddo was a toddler. At this point, interruptions just feel like how life is. But I also know that they are incredibly hard for me when I'm concentrating on work, particularly. But interruptions don't just happen when you're working, right? They can come at any time, and sometimes they hit when you're least prepared for them. For our brains, an interruption can feel incredibly shocking, especially if we're concentrating very hard and don't see it coming. But even if we know there is going to be an interruption coming, we're still, there's still the potential to be just totally thrown. And it's not just about, the being disrupted part. It's about losing your train of thought or emotional balance that you had. So here are a few ways that you can set boundaries around like interruptions. First, you can set up a signal. So sometimes you just need a second to wrap up your thoughts or complete a mental process before responding. And using a clear but gentle signal to communicate to others that, I just need a moment. The important part here is to have discussed and agreed upon it beforehand, and to say to the people that you are around you, like, hey, this is a struggle that I'm having. So if you need something and you come up to me, I'm going to do this when I need you to just hang on for a second. Okay, this can be something simple, like raising up a hand or a finger to, say, give me a second. It can also be a visual cue, like a little small flag on your, if it's work you're doing, a little red flag on your desk when you're in hyperfocus, so that people know when they come up and your red flag's up, they need to wait a minute. Talk to your kids and your partner about asking, like, hey, is this a good time, before they just launch into a question or a request. Obviously, with kids, depending on their age, that can be more or less effective, of course. And you don't have to be mean about it. You shouldn't be mean about it. But especially if you have ADHD and you have kids with ADHD, it can be very helpful to them, because eventually they're going to start working on coping mechanisms of their own, and having a foundation of something that they've seen that works for you is going to be helpful for them too, in the future. It's okay to let others know when you're not mentally or emotionally ready for a conversation or a task. If you need something, I want to give it my full attention, but so I need 5 minutes to finish what I'm doing so that I can focus on you. Or I'm feeling a little bit scattered right now. Can we revisit this later? I need to reset before I can give this my focus. Just using your words, which is something that I find hard. I that is not a thing that I have overcome completely. And this can be a really, it can be a struggle when you're, especially if you're a people pleaser. If you have that struggle, then it's hard to not feel like you are obliged to give everyone your attention whenever they want it. But you're not obliged. You are absolutely entitled to have a moment to finish the task that you're on, and to give your brain its best chance to finish what it's doing. So also, we don't always know when we're going to get into, like a really good focus mode, but if you're trying to get some focus mojo going, then letting the people around you know that you're going to be doing this before you jump in is that's just good practice. Even at work, but even outside of work, it helps to create dedicated spaces where you can focus without interruptions, like set boundaries for, like, these are quiet zones. This is, this is where I'm doing a thing and I need it to be chill here. Or a specific, maybe not a physical location, maybe it's a specific time of day when interruptions are limited. And if you're transitioning between tasks, let people know, like, yes, I'm done with this thing, but I have to go into this thing. By using these strategies, you can protect your focus and mental energy, not just during work, but in different areas of your life. Now, if there is a specific part of a transition that's tripping you up, here are some tips that are geared towards the different parts of a transition. So if stopping is the hardest part, then first it can help to start the day with a plan. And I obviously I say that knowing that creating a plan is hard for us, but having at least an outline of a plan of what the things that have to happen in your day and when they have to happen, it can help to reduce the decision fatigue and make stopping easier because, like you already saw this coming. If you know stopping will be too hard, maybe don't start whatever the thing is right now, especially if it's, if it's not I have to do this, then let's maybe wait until a time where we don't have time constraints. If you're in the middle of something and you're, like we talked earlier about being afraid of losing your place or forgetting where, what you were doing, make a note, write down, this is where I was at, and this is what I had, this is what I plan to do next. And these are just a few little notes to help you come back in when you get back to it. So you feel a little bit less worried about walking away from it and it just, disappearing completely. Countdown timers can be helpful in mentally preparing to stop, especially if they're visual, like if you can see it in your field of view somewhere. So the cutoff is coming. This also works really well for kids. Change the environment. So if you're changing tasks, move to a different space to help break the connection with the previous task that you were working on. And then you can create a stopping ritual, just like the starting ritual that I talked about earlier. You can have something like that for stopping a task. Now, if starting is the hardest part, then obviously you can create a starting ritual, again, like the one I talked about earlier. Make sure, take a moment to think through what you're doing. Make sure you have everything you need before you start. Get some dopamine going. Do something to make the next task more appealing by pairing it with something fun, or just, make it somehow more interesting or rewarding. And then there is always, a good standby for anything getting started, using a body double. So working alongside someone else can help get you started. And there are apps online. There's Flow Club. Is it Flow Club? Focus Mate, I think, is another one that you can, if you don't have someone in person to be able to body double with you, then you can get online and find someone online. Now, if the in-between is the hardest part, like you don't have problems stopping, but you get lost in the middle of going to the next thing, you just have trouble with the in-between the stopping and the starting the next thing. Move around, get up, take a quick walk, stretch, even if it's just around your house or around your office, to kind of help you reset. Make sure you're building in enough buffer time between tasks so that you're not just in a super rush, and it can be helpful to batch tasks, group similar tasks together to minimize how many transitions you're having to make in a day. And this is a big one. Limit the digital distractions. We all know that our phones are just a complete time suck, but picking up your phone and looking at it between tasks is really the easiest way to just completely get lost. There's going to be a notification. There's going to be that instinct to just open TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, YouTube Shorts, just real quick. I have 5 minutes. Let me just real quick scroll. And no, don't do it. I promise you're going to be way better off if you don't. I know it's hard to resist, but if you can, stop and remind yourself, nope, I need to get on to the next thing and I don't want to look at the phone. I know that's easier said than done, but if you can, as often as possible, avoid picking up the phone between tasks. It's going to help you immensely. So, what about when transitions catch you off guard? Sometimes transitions are thrust upon us that are slightly more invasive than just your kid interrupting to ask for a snack. Maybe it's a last-minute meeting or an unexpected phone call or a family crisis. These can throw even the most well-managed ADHD brain into chaos. Here are some coping strategies in those emergency-type situations. And I suppose a family crisis is more of an emergency. A last-minute meeting can definitely feel like an emergency, especially when you need to mentally prepare yourself for meetings because you don't like meetings or phone calls. I don't like talking on the phone. So yeah, I need getting a surprise phone call is bleh. So first things first, pause. Pausing is my go-to recommendation for really any ADHD-related struggle. So of course it's going to be the number one recommendation in a high-stress situation like the ones I'm talking about here. Seriously. Take a moment to breathe and give yourself just a little mental reset before diving in. Even just a few deep breaths can help you regulate your nervous system and smooth that transition a little bit. Just take a quick second to assess priorities. Do a little mental or even a written checklist to figure out what needs attention first. Again, the communication thing, let people know I just need a minute to wrap my brain around this, or, can I call you back in 5 minutes? Ask for the minute you need to get your brain situated. Have a notebook or an app where you take notes to jot down where you were, and set a timer or an alarm to remind you to come back to the thing you were working on. And finally, be kind to yourself. Unexpected transitions are tough, but they're a part of life. Focus on what you can do rather than what you couldn't control. So that's all for this week. I hope some of these strategies can help you make transitions suck a little less so you can start feeling more in control of your day. Thanks for hanging out with me. Don't forget to grab the free ADHD routine starter kit from the link in the show notes or my website. And if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe, or just share this episode with someone you think might find it helpful too. Now, go find a transition that's been tripping you up and kick its ass. I'll see you next week.